I think President Biden really believes this was successful. Joe
By the way, we're out of Afghanistan.
Biden's a dangerous man when it comes to our national security and our economic well-being, and you really can't.
Is he a dangerous man? So, I'm sorry, Lindsey Graham, can we find clips of you for the last 10 years saying leaving Afghanistan would be dangerous? Huh? Does that exist?
Believe a word he's telling you. Let's just look at what he's telling us about our own national security.
Okay, let's do it. Dude, do you lick your lips like that between every sentence? Because I'm not trying to do this.
The war is over. Well, if the war is over, why we're still using drones to kill terrorists in Afghanistan?
Because we use drones to kill terrorists in other countries that we're not at war in. So I beg your pardon. As a member of the Senate, are you calling for a declaration of war anywhere the U.S. uses drone strikes against terrorist encampments? If so, get on it, sweetheart.
I can assure you the war between radical Islam and the United States and Afghanistan is not over.
Yeah, but that's not what we were there doing for 10 years.
Here's what's so misleading about the Biden administration. They're trying to convince us that we can be protected from another 9/11 by using drones in Afghanistan. Well, let me just remind you about Iraq and Syria.
So, we don't, I mean, Trump pulled our base, gave our bases to the Russians in Syria. I'm sorry, do we have, does anybody know, do we currently have a giant fucking base that we permanently occupy in Syria?
Biden pushed really hard to remove all of our troops from Iraq. He was told if you do that, ISIS could surge. Well, what happened? When we left our troops, guys, we started using drones. That did not stop the caliphate from forming. The drone program will not stop ISIS from growing in Afghanistan. It did not work in Iraq and Syria. We're very much exposed to a 9/11.
No, we're not. Look at this asshole making this shit up. Look at this. Look at the eye drift. Look, where the fuck are you looking? Again, are we dealing with a Don Jr. Putting Post-it notes on the side of his fucking camera, or is straight up Fox News just saying, Lindsey, we'll have you on, but you have to say our 3 talking points?
Again, this is the same president who told you there was no al-Qaeda presence in Afghanistan about a week ago. He's the same guy that said all of our allies are cheering.
No, he didn't. He said there's 500 there, and they're not a primary concern. We did our job diminishing them, but even those guys are the al-Qaeda that rolled into the Taliban, partly whom we killed, but a lot of them just transitioned from al-Qaeda related to the Taliban itself, which is trying to present itself as a real governing body. So they're under the envelope of the Taliban, and they're both at war, in theory, with ISIS.
He's the same guy that said the Taliban are waving Americans through. You can't believe anything he says, but
they did. It's not even debatable. That whole thing, like we gave a list of Americans to the Taliban, which, I mean, there's no evidence they actually gave a name list, that they really gave just a vehicle list. Like, there's a yellow bus coming, let it through. That kind of shit. And everybody's like, oh, they told the Taliban that there was a yellow bus full of Americans on it. And then the yellow bus got through, everybody on it got on a fucking plane and is now out of the country. But they're still like, oh, they gave it to the Taliban. How could they?
I think in his mind, he believes he's been successful, and that scares the hell out of me.
To your point.
Well, it might be a little concerning that you think he isn't. I'm a lot quieter than the video. I will turn myself up. I think that's wise. It could be it. How about that? Is that a little better?
You can't believe what he says. Senator Graham,
you can't believe what he says. All right, well, just look at the numbers. There's a couple of hundred Americans who weren't sure they wanted to leave, who were told in April they should leave, but were back and forth about it. There was an article by our by the lovely and talented Diana Falzone, who writes amazing stuff on like the Weinstein case and that kind of stuff. She's an old friend. She used to work at Fox News and left for a lot of the same reason women who are attractive, especially, leave Fox News, if you know what I mean. She wrote an article about, this is the article, and it's about, it's the idea that some people got out and other people didn't. She had escaped before the last U.S. flight from Kabul. Her sister didn't. The last U.S. flight took off from Kabul on Monday, taking with it the last sliver of hope for the reunion of two sisters, one who made it out on time and the other who didn't. Technically not true. They didn't take out the last sliver of hope. There's obviously a lot of hope. There's people are making it to the border. They even talk about the options that she has. But I understand this is more of an editor adding that to make you go, oh dear, and read the rest of the article. But there's one particular part of this really stood out to me. Where is it? Let's see. I believe it's order. All right, here we go. I knew the United States was withdrawing its forces, but I believed it may have kept some of them behind to help Afghanistan's security, which was because this is not the result, by the way, long-term of, Biden's decision to leave. It was not the result of the resolve to leave at any particular point. It's because the date kept coming and passing. I was like, yeah, we're getting the fuck out. And then, oh, we need a few people in there. Oh, we're getting out, though. But we'll leave a few people in there. And then even Trump's admission yesterday that May 1st was bullshit. They would have left over the course of 2 years, still kept a military base there that probably would have helped the Afghans in, with air support and other shit like that. That promise that existed during that time is why she was led to believe that. This is why a lot of folks, because we never kept that promise till now. We didn't mean it before. And when Biden came in, he meant it. He followed through. And the shock that everyone is feeling is, oh my God, I can't believe they did what they said they were going to do. I knew the United States was withdrawing its forces, but I believed it may have kept some of them behind to help Afghanistan's security. This is why she didn't leave earlier. This is why she and her sister and her mom didn't start exiting in April, because they thought, well, yeah, August 31st, but they always say that. And they kept telling everybody, no, we're for real. Everybody's going. And like, yeah, well, they say that all the time. So this is more of the effect of broken promises than the fact that Biden got out and left people there. It's that for years and years, we kept saying we were going to get out, and the presidents in charge did not do it. And so you can kind of forgive these folks for thinking that, yeah, they don't mean it. They keep saying, they always say they're going to leave. It's been 20 fucking years. They always say they're going to leave. And then what do you know? We finally leave and everybody's like, wait, what do you mean you're leaving? Yeah, we told you 19 times in the last 3 months. We were organizing groups of people out. The embassy was emptying out. The British embassy was emptying out. Everybody was leaving. That's the result of not keeping your promises. That's the result of kicking the can down the road. The people that are dying because they didn't get on a plane, because they were sure, and they didn't wait until the last minute, they were sure that we were going to stay because we always did. Those are directly related to, Obama saying we're going to leave by the end of 2016, Trump saying he was going to leave every fucking week of his presidency and during his campaign. And arguably the end of the Bush administration going, yeah, we don't need to stay there for very long. We just need to do this. Yeah, we're going to batten down a couple of hatches and then we're going to get out of here. Every time a president doesn't follow through on one of these kind of military choices, it leads the people there to believe that they can stick around, that we don't mean it. That's what's happening with these folks. That's what's happening with a lot of the dual citizenship Americans who are not sure if they were going to leave or not and were vacillating back and forth and didn't sign up to get out of the country, went to the airport a couple times to try and get out randomly, but didn't organize it with anybody because they didn't really buy it. And then they were like, you know what, fuck it. Let's go back. So as a leader, one of the reasons why your word has to mean something is that when it doesn't, when you kick the can down the road after you said, yeah, we're getting out, you lure people like that into a false sense of security, like, well, we don't have to leave. It'll be fine. And then when you do actually leave, or they're left alone without that support, there's reason why you would assume that you'll always have that support, because they've always been lying. They've always said they were going to stick around. Biden's a man of his word. He did he was against the surge for this very fucking reason. And when he said we're going to get out, he meant we're going to get out.
Journal today writes, the president and...
Wait, I'm sorry, who? The Wall Street Journal? Who owns the Wall Street Journal? It's not the same guy that owns Fox, is it?
His advisors have decided that the only way out of this debacle is to lie about it, blame everybody else, and claim that defeat is really a victory. Neither one is reassuring about Mr. Biden's character, his judgment, or more ominous...
First of all, fucko, that's an editorial from the Wall Street Journal, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News. And you're not... Stop reading that like it's fact. You're an asshole, and you're reading the opinion of another asshole who... And both of you work for the same company owned by the same guy.
The long 3.5 years left in his presidency.
Hey, you know what shows your character, Steve and Brian, is that your co-host is always a pretty blonde woman. When they hire somebody new, it's invariably, I think they might have had one that was different, is always asked or chosen because she will always wear a short skirt and is forced to sit in the middle, boy, girl, boy, and the camera is right down the barrel. Like, you assholes are waiting for a Basic Instinct moment. Like, that, is that half of your viewership? It's like, this is the day she uncrosses her legs and forgets. Like, all the time. I mean, I can't be the only person who recognizes this bullshit. Christ almighty. By the way, thanks for... don't forget to subscribe on Twitch, you lovely emoji people.
Well, that's true. They're trying...
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. He's an asshole. He's reading an asshole's opinion, and you're an asshole for just agreeing with it because they brought you on the show, because they're not going to bring on anybody who doesn't agree with them.
Turned the page.
Yep.
And they're lying about the state of play in Afghanistan. Here's the state of play.
All right, let's get it. This is the state of play from Ms. Lindsey.
The Taliban are in control, but it won't last that long. I'll make a
Okay.
prediction on her show. I think a year from now, the whole country is going to disintegrate into a real civil war. You've got Afghan resistance fighters.
12 tribes, loose-knit group, calls themselves the Taliban, can't functionally run a country. Everybody with any brains is headed for the exit. It's not a real country. It was never a real country, except when we made it into one temporarily. And here comes Miss Lindsey with his make Afghanistan the 51st state argument.
Anchor Valley. Have you heard the president or anybody on his team mention for one moment, let's go help those guys who fought along our side?
They just
Yes. Yes. For months. Has anybody heard Lindsey Graham complain about the special immigrant visa program being hamstrung and sabotaged by Trump and Stephen Miller? For 2 fucking years? For the entirety of of Trump's administration, when they were going to get out, right? We're out. We're getting out. We're totally getting out. We're getting out next term, May 1st. But that date's malleable anyway. So that's the first day of a 2-year exit, but we'll still have a base there. Get fucked, you lunatic.
Actually allow women to live.
They just repelled the Taliban.
Yeah, they repel the Taliban, but Biden is negotiating with the Taliban.
Uh-huh.
He's putting all his eggs in the Taliban basket. Well,
Sorry. Biden is putting all of his eggs in the Taliban basket. Let's see. Trump, Taliban deal. So let's say you were, I don't know, gonna make a deal, and there were multiple parties to involve in said deal. And you could have involved, let's say you had a basket, and in that basket of deplorables, you had the possibility of yourself, the Taliban, and the Afghan government. And say you're planning on exiting. So you take yourself out of the basket. We're just going to leave the basket alone. And we're not going to involve the Afghan government in these negotiations. So the only eggs in this fucking basket that he's talking about is indeed the Taliban. If anybody put all their eggs in the basket of the Taliban, or put all their Taliban eggs in a basket, I don't know, 5 eggs all around. There's just too many eggs to even deal with this. I think Lindsey Graham early
5 eggs
wins our 5 eggs of the day.
5
award.
eggs in a month.
Yeah.
Eat 2 eggs a day. 5 eggs.
Right. 5 eggs. Trump made a deal with the Taliban to the exclusion of the Afghan government. He did not involve them in this. This isn't even like a mystery. This isn't even like there's a fucking hot mic audio. This was all over the news. Trump bragged about it. He bragged about putting all of his eggs, all 5 of them,
5 eggs
in the Taliban basket.
Taliban and Al Qaeda are one. That's how we got attacked on 9/11 20 years ago.
No, they're not. The Taliban was protecting Al Qaeda, but they were not a part of it. Some members of Al Qaeda overlapped with the Taliban because there are 12 tribes that make up the Taliban, and there's a lot of porous and kind of gangster relations between different groups of them. Some of them are in the poppy trade, some of them are in the war trade, some of them just fucking live in the middle of nowhere, and if you want to go through, you have to pay them a toll, essentially. This like cartoonish oversimplification would be fine if this asshole hadn't been in the National Security Council for years and shit like that. If he wasn't privy to this kind of stuff. If he was just random no-name pundit who wasn't sitting in office, wasn't a sitting fucking senator. But he knows better than this.
ISIS considers the Taliban the Rotary Club, and you've got
ISIS considers the Taliban the Rotary Club. So apparently this is the day we find out that Lindsey Graham thinks that the Rotary Club is someone that you blow up or slit the throats of.
the resistance in Panjshir that's being completely ignored. The Taliban are destroying all the cell towers in Panjshir Valley, so the resistance can't communicate with the world. So I would urge the Biden administration to send satellite phones, start helping the resistance. And if they try to give one dime of aid to the Taliban, I will fight that as hard as I can in the United States Senate, because if you start paying terrorists,
What do you define as giving one dime to the Taliban? If you're giving it to people, if you're giving like aid and like food aid, water and that kind of stuff, are you know, no more water if any member of the Taliban, who's that? I don't know. Anybody who looks generally like that in the entire area, anybody in kind of Western desert wear.
like the Taliban, to get Americans out of Afghanistan or get our allies out of Afghanistan who fought along our side, you're putting Americans at risk all over the world, because it will be open season on Americans throughout the world by terrorist organizations.
So, I see. So if you deal with the Taliban, who are currently trying to form a government and pretend that they can take over the country and run it, and they want to be in charge of every fucking thing, if you negotiate with them or talk with those folks when they're helping get, you know, your people the British, the French, and other Afghans that helped us, and women and girls in there. If it works, by the way, if it works, and you're talking to these folks and you're negotiating with them, and you're going, we'll send you food aid and that kind of stuff, but don't murder anybody as they're trying to leave the country, and you do that, and in Lindsey Graham's way of thinking, that's negotiating with terrorists. That's negotiating with the hostage taker. And Lindsey Graham is soundly in the shoot the hostage wing of the Republican Party.
Senator, we've heard so many stories of our people, our allies, or Americans that are trapped over there and still trapped. There's one that was brought to our attention this morning. There is an interpreter there. He's going by the name Mohammed, and he tried to make it to the airport. They told him, you can get on, but your wife and your 4 children can't. So, of course, he didn't leave them. He actually helped Joe Biden 13 years ago in 2008 when he was a senator, and John Kerry was on this helicopter, and so was Chuck Hagel. They had to land their helicopter in the middle of a snowstorm, and this interpreter is sent in, and he helped so many Americans. Pete Hegseth told us earlier on the show.
Thanks for showing his picture, by the way. I'm sure that it won't get back. He's using the name Mohammed so that he won't be harmed. But here's a picture of him.
And he rescued the senators, and he's still there. And his message to Joe Biden is, hello, Mr. President, save me and my family. Don't forget me here. How are we going to get these folks out that need to be rescued?
I think we're going to try to bribe them out. I think we're putting on the table.
I see. So this is the hostage storyline.
The Biden administration is economic aid to the Taliban. If you release the hostages, the Americans and the allies who fought along our side,
they don't have control of them. They don't have them. These are not hostages. They don't even know that this person exists, except that you just played their picture on the fucking air. They're going door to door and house to house, supposedly hunting people, and a lot of people are, taking names out of their phones and their connections, that kind of stuff. And by the way, who here thinks that anybody at Fox News wants that dude to bring his wife and children to the United States so that they can live here? We'll put that aside for a second. But this guy, they'll negotiate it because whatever the story was about him getting there and they couldn't bring his family because they hadn't done all the paperwork and they didn't know who they were and that kind of stuff. And they've run into trouble like that before. And so they're negotiating a way for them to get out some other way. And all that kind of stuff is happening. By the way, let me see if let me see. Yes, Taliban secret to airport. Here's an example of, let's see. Yeah, here you go. This, I don't know why during the evacuation, remove this. I don't know why during the evacuation, this didn't get more news. U.S. worked with Taliban to have militants guide evacuating Americans through secret gates at Kabul airport. One of the reasons why there weren't a bunch of Americans killed in that explosion is because we were working with Taliban militants to escort Americans through other routes to the airport, both before and after the bombing, to save their own lives. Now Lindsey Graham and Fox and Friends would prefer it if we showed an aerial photograph of this while it was happening, as people are getting out, so that we know it's happening, so that the Biden administration can prove that they're doing everything they can. Instead of going, if we told you, they would blow this area up. According to CNN, U.S. worked out a secret deal with the Taliban amidst evacuation. The deal reportedly involves secret gates at the Kabul airport and Taliban militants guiding Americans. U.S. and Taliban worked out a deal setting up secret gates at Kabul airport with Taliban militants guiding evacuating Americans through them until August 31st. CNN reported the deal involved militants helping transport clusters of Americans, and U.S. Special Forces worked with Taliban to organize several daily trips guiding the evacuees. Now, I can't imagine why the Biden administration wasn't completely forthcoming while this was happening and tell the American people what was going on. Why wouldn't they share this information? According to CNN, there were also evacuation call centers manned by U.S. forces, and the Taliban reportedly helped refer evacuees to it. It worked. It worked beautifully. An official who spoke to CNN anonymously said, yeah, because don't want to actually let people know what's going on while it's going on. The arrangement highlights a more direct tactical relationship between the U.S. and the Taliban during a month where the U.S. withdrew its forces and helped evacuate 123,000 people from Afghanistan. Insider reached out to the White House, State Department, and U.S. Central Command for comment. They didn't give it to you because they might need to keep doing it once the airport is back up and running through international help, which supposedly the Taliban is welcoming. Once you start getting flights back out of there, you can get other people out on commercial flights going, yeah, I don't know, they're just flying to see relatives. Why in the world? I'm sure Lindsey Graham and Fox and Friends is very upset that the State Department and the U.S. military and Joe Biden were not forthcoming in telling them. I mean, why didn't they tell us about this on August 28th or the 29th or the 30th or the 12th or in July? God damn, these people are stupid.
Give you money. That is a dangerous way to do business when it comes to terrorism. And if they start doing that, ISIS is going to turn on Taliban even more ferociously. Do you remember the movie Sophie's Choice?
Oh my fucking God. Do you remember the movie Sophie's Choice? Encapsulate us. Give us your encapsulated review. Lady Lindsay, what is it? Did you give it 3 snaps up? What happened?
Yeah.
Where you had a concentration camp victim had a daughter and a son, and the German said, which one do you want me to take?
Right.
Hundreds of people came to these checkpoints, and they had to pick between them and their families. Joe Biden, if there was a contest to screw up Afghanistan and
Excuse me, the planes leaving, just for the record, the C-17s that were leaving were not going to a fucking concentration camp. And the people that went back, who stayed with their families and found another route to it or filled out other paperwork or went to one of these call centers, were directed by the Taliban to go there and had been told months before to start getting out. And they were processing people as fast as they could because Donald Trump stopped the SIV program that would have gotten these people out and their families and guaranteed there would be no wait places between in Qatar or in Uzbekistan or in Turkey or Germany or any of these other fucking places where we have agreements to get these folks out. Hamstrung that whole thing.
America, let's say.
Yes, Lindsay, tell us about Steel Magnolias.
The plan by Joe Biden would have won the contest. I cannot tell you how dangerous life is going to be for those inside of Afghanistan who helped us. And I cannot stress enough how much we're exposed 20 years after 9/11 to another attack originating in Afghanistan.
Right.
Right. Yeah, just right. Just true. What about Yemen? I mean, what about Somalia? What about, I mean, the hijackers from Saudi Arabia, why don't we have a base there? Why have we not launched a massive attack on Saudi Arabia? I mean, considering, think about it. Hold on, I need this. Why aren't we attacking? Why? I mean, have you heard Donald Trump? There are tons of Yemenis and people from the Middle East coming across our southern border. Why don't we have a giant military base in Mexico to fight them? When are we going to go over there, Lady G?
Because the strategy we have in place will not work.
So the over the horizon.
The strategy we have in place will not work. The only strategy that works is us to stay for fucking ever. Never leave. Make Afghanistan the 51st state so that those fuckers can never come here. Know what I'm saying? Doobity-doo.
It doesn't exist because it comes from the Middle East, because we can't get any of the stands to allow us to base. It's
Did
gonna
it
take
work
too
in
long.
Iraq and Syria?
It didn't, and it takes too long to get there.
Did it work in Iraq and Syria?
No,
Did it work in Iraq and Syria? Has a 9/11 been staged from Iraq and Syria? I mean, ever?
And that's what brings me to my other point. He said we shouldn't go for the threats of 2021. We shouldn't be going by the threats of 2001. He says we face threats from al-Shabaab in Somalia, al-Qaeda affiliates in Syria and the Arabian Peninsula, and ISIS attempting to create a caliphate in Syria. Okay, al-Shabaab, we have people in that region. Al-Qaeda affiliates in
Al-Qaeda, we have people in that region, do we? Are we in control of the government and the military there? Do we have permanent installations? We have people there. Just people. It's people.
Yeah, and we were there. He doesn't know we're in Syria. But guess who is in Afghanistan? The number 2 guy to bin Laden after Zawahiri is now in Kabul. The Haqqani network affiliated with al-Qaeda, the closest and the most lethal.
Sorry. Who would that be? Are we talking about Baradar?
They are providing the security, and the Taliban have people with them that hate them that are even worse than the Taliban. You don't have to travel out of Afghanistan to meet our enemies, Senator. What does he...
Right. But they have to travel out of Afghanistan to do anything to us or to our allies. And that's true of Yemeni terrorists and Somalian terrorists and a lot of Central African countries, a lot of Middle Eastern countries. And if they don't get out, who gives a goddamn? Our goal should be to allow the women and girls who are in that country who do not want to live under the Taliban or any group like that to find a way to exit safely, or to stay and support whatever uprising they want to do within their own country. The same as any other country. Instead of this looking at them like they're fucking pets.
Well, I think he's delusional about the situation on the ground. A week ago, he said there's no al-Qaeda presence in Afghanistan. Well, I about fell over when I heard that. The number 2 guy in the Taliban organization is
And we mean number 2. Just saying for the record. Hold on. Seriously. All right.
Haqqani member with a $10 million bounty on his head offered by the U.S. government. It's illegal under our law to negotiate with foreign terrorist organizations. I think the Taliban are a foreign terrorist.
I'm sorry. That's interesting. Run that by me again.
Our law to negotiate with foreign terrorist organizations. I think the Taliban are a foreign terrorist organizations.
I'm sorry. Run that by me again. The who is a what?
Number 2 guy has a $10 million bounty on his head. Real quickly, let's look at Syria and Iraq. We have organizations. I think the Taliban. It's illegal under our law to negotiate with foreign terrorist organizations. I think the Taliban are a foreign terrorist organizations because the number 2 guy has a $10 million bounty on his head. Real quickly, let's look at Syria and Iraq. We have American soldiers.
Real quickly, let's just revel in the fact that Lindsey Graham just said on Fox and Friends that Donald John Trump made an illegal deal with a terrorist organization while he was president. I'm sorry, is there another way to interpret his bullshit? The fuck are you talking about? And having a moment in a Mexican standoff where you're like, all right, put your gun down, I'll put my gun down, we'll all do this at the same time. Is that the same deal as going, hey, look, if you want to kill that guy, I don't really give a shit or whatever. I just want to take my shit and go? For fucking real. Well, I guess that's a piece of news. Lindsey Graham says on Fox and Friends that Donald Trump negotiated with terrorists. Progress indeed. Perhaps Lindsey Graham's office would like to respond to questions about when Trump is going to be indicted for negotiating with terrorists. I mean, right? For fuck's sake.
Inside of Syria working with the Kurds to keep keep ISIS from coming back. We have 5,000 people almost inside of Iraq to make sure ISIS doesn't come back. We have special forces on the ground in Africa to deal with al-Shabaab. What's the one theater where terrorists are there by the thousands? We have no troops. Afghanistan. Where's
right. Now, do we have, for example, troops everywhere there are terrorists by the thousands, like Yemen, for example? No. And are we the primary force and the primary government in areas where al-Shabaab is functioning, or let's say the Iraq government, which stands on its own, which, if we did leave, wouldn't be overrun by ISIS in an afternoon, for example, to give a kind of parallel?
One place that we got attacked from 20 years ago, Afghanistan.
By Saudis. Hold on. Let's see. Well, at least, let's see. So the Saudis, most of the hijackers were Saudi. Images for Trump Saudi bow. It's surprisingly easy to find. These folks. There's a little video of this fella. Trump called a hypocrite for Saudi king bow. There you go. Yeah.
Biden has learned nothing in the last 20 years. This is the biggest mistake.
Oh no, he's learned a lot. He was against the surge. He was like, we should have done that then. It would have saved a lot of lives. It would have saved a lot of American money and a lot of weaponry falling into terrorist hands. We need to get the fuck out, and they didn't.
Since 9/11, he's put our nation at risk. Who's going to fight along our side after we abandon all these allies in Afghanistan? And the likelihood of another 9/11 originating from Afghanistan is 10 times greater than it is from Iraq, Syria.
Yeah, 10 times 0 is 0.
Yeah, or Africa.
And nobody's been fired. They all have their job.
Yeah, they're not going to be fired. They're not. And by the way, these are the same assholes who, that think Derek Chauvin was railroaded. So
we're in for this chaos for 3.5 more years.
20 years after 9/11, the Taliban is back in control.
And they got a casket of us with a flag draped over it. That's how
yeah, it's empty. Who gives a fuck? Are we going to set up a base in every country that creates, that burns us in effigy? Get the fuck out of here.
they are.
You haven't heard of any threats, have you?
Oh my God, I can't. Well, let's look at it this way, guys. How smart do you have to be to figure out that if Al Qaeda and ISIS are roaming freely inside of...
That's not what she asked you, asshole. You're putting that together. You're creating that theory that that's where the major threat is. There's a British and French casket there too. Remember, because they're buying the whole graveyard of empires bullshit. Here's what, if the right wing had any guts whatsoever, here's what they would be saying about Afghanistan. There is no threat within that country that is organized in any way that we couldn't hit it from the sky or use satellites to track it down. And there's no reason for us to be in that country because there's no worthwhile elements there that we can't get somewhere else that don't require risking soldiers' lives to get them, like lithium for batteries and bullshit like that. And if the Chinese and the Russians haven't learned this lesson and they want to roll in there and try to make deals with warring tribes and ISIS and the Taliban and a bunch of bullshit and draw that attention to them, they're going to have caskets with the Chinese and Russian flag being carried around Kabul in a couple of years too. It's not the graveyard of empires. Everybody who's fought in Afghanistan eventually went, is there a way to just go around this fucking area? Nobody wants it. The Iranian border to Afghanistan is not there because the Afghans fought it back. It's there because the Iranians were like, yeah, we don't need anything past those mountains. That's a bunch of bullshit. Same thing with Pakistan. It's useless land. It's tribal land. There's no functioning government. There never was. We held one up for a while, but unless we want to make it the 51st state, we want to get the fuck out of there. There are legitimate threats, and there are countries with functioning governments, which means functioning corruption, which means functioning weapons trades that we have to be worried about. Afghanistan is not one of them, not anymore.
Afghanistan, and the only thing protecting us is the Taliban. The Taliban doesn't have the will or the capability to protect American interests. We're blind and we're naked. Yes, I've heard of threats. It's just going to be a matter of months, not years, before the threats materialize. The training camps will be open pretty soon for Al Qaeda, and ISIS is flourishing. The number of ISIS fighters.
By the way, are you the new Baghdad Bob? Are you just now the PR wing of ISIS and Al Qaeda? I mean, I understand you want points against Joe Biden, but at a certain point, like you just basically substituted ISIS and Al Qaeda for Donald Trump. You're just blowing smoke up their ass.
Doubled when they had the jailbreak. This is a witch's.
Oh, I'm sorry, the jailbreak? You mean where they killed the current leader of ISIS when they broke their guys out, and a bunch of other ISIS fighters broke free, but they were just random assholes? Or do you mean the 5,000 Taliban fighters that Trump negotiated out of jail, forced the Afghan government to release? Or the leader of the current Taliban?
Of evil in Afghanistan. The vacuum created by this stupid withdrawal has put us at risk. Thousands of...
Sorry, so you were against the May 1st date? Just going on record? Right? I mean, is this not Lindsey Graham also going on record? May 1st was bullshit. That it should have never been made a date, because you don't give a date to your enemy, right? Until you give a date to your enemy. Till Trump gives a date to the enemy, then it's okay. I mean, then that's smart tactical leadership, because he's not going to live up to it. That's the trick. That's his 5-level chess. Is that you're playing regular chess, and he's got someone sneaking up behind you to blow your brains out and saying, "I won at chess."
Fought along our side are going to get killed. They just shot a guy for being a folk singer. Do you think the Taliban is really any different? I promise you this: if we try to legitimize the Taliban, I will declare war on the Biden administration in the U.S.
Yeah, why, if the Taliban decides to do anything, if we start recognizing them, then Miss Lindsey will do their work for them. I will declare war on my country's government. Who needs the Taliban when you got Lady Lindsey?
You got to get the majority.
And we have an open border.
All right, Senator.
Don't forget open border, and these Yemenis are coming across the bottom. Oh my God, why don't we have a base in Mexico?
Graham,
Well,
thank
hopefully
you.
get some Democrats that are not completely blind to what's going on.
Well,
Thank
let's
you.
see. All right, sir, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Senator Lynn.
derp. So what do we get out of that? Lindsey Graham hopping on Fox and Friends, admitting that the May 1st removal date was dangerous, stupid, and bullshit. That leaving it all was never going to happen under his watch. And if we did, it was just waiting for the next 9/11. So to keep the next 9/11 from happening, since there's a 9/11 every year, we have to stay in Afghanistan for all the years. Forever and all the years. And of course, Iraq and Syria are the same, because they have functioning governments, functioning militaries, and their own sovereignty. And we gave 2 military bases to the Russians in Syria, and allowed the Kurds to be killed by the Turks because, strong leadership. That really showed the Al-Qaeda there. All right. I mean, I do think there was a bit of news in that, which is Lindsey Graham admitting that he, along with the Trump administration and everyone involved, knew or thought that the May 1st deadline was bullshit punting, in line with all the punting that has happened, leading us to be in Afghanistan for 20 fucking years. And that the big shock to them that apparently has them clutching pearls all over the fucking place is that, it was, if you ever left, it would be a crime against America. So never leave. And the fact that Biden decided to leave is like, what in the world? How is that even possible? Well, it is, and we're done. And if there's Al-Qaeda training camps that start up, that start messing around, we have every opportunity and every possibility of being able to hit them. There is no current functioning Afghan government of any sort to even push back against it. And we're not going to hit those bases right away, those Al-Qaeda training camps and the like. And by God, let them all rush in there. Corral them. Imagine a military strategy, if you will, where there's this satellite group and this satellite group and this satellite group and this satellite group, and they live amongst civilians and other people, and they train people. And every time you want to strike one of them, you have to be concerned you're going to hit more civilians and all that kind of stuff. And then you open up basically a territory where no one wanted to control it in the first fucking place. And they all go there and set up camps in the middle of fucking nowhere in mountainous regions and in, autonomous camps that are, Al-Qaeda only. And you can hit them from the air without sending soldiers in. That's not preferable to, say, having to deal with them in and amongst the population in a particular group. No? Is there a strategic mind in any of these fucking people's groups that they could talk to? Anybody that would go, yeah, tap the brakes, dumbass. Because what are they saying other than make Afghanistan the 51st state, stay forever?